At 11:30, a soft knock interrupted my thoughts. It was David Ramirez, the manager. Behind him stood two uniformed staff members and a bellman with several carts stacked high with luggage. "Mrs. Collins," David said gently, "the belongings from suites 301, 302, 304, and 305 are ready in the lobby as you instructed. The guests have until noon to check out. After that, they'll need to find alternate accommodations." I nodded. "Thank you. David, please make sure they're treated with courtesy. They are still my children, even if they've forgotten what that means." His expression softened. "Of course, ma'am. We'll handle everything with dignity." As he turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of my sons and daughters-in-law downstairs through the lobby's glass windows. Their faces were masks of fury and humiliation. Sophia argued loudly with the receptionist. Rachel sat pale and silent. Michael's hands cut the air with frantic gestures, and Daniel stood stiffly, as though trying to hold what little dignity remained. For the first time, I felt no guilt, only clarity. At 11:45, another knock rattled my door. This time, it wasn't frantic pounding, but a hesitant, almost pleading rhythm. I opened it to find Daniel standing alone, his tie loosened, his eyes rimmed red. "Mom," he began, his voice low. "Please, don't do this. Think about the grandchildren. They'll remember this forever." I studied his face, the lines of age that mirrored my own. The boy I once cradled, now a man who had conspired against me. "They will remember," I agreed softly, "but not the way you think. They'll remember that actions have consequences, that betrayal has a price." He stepped forward, desperation in his eyes. "We can fix this. We'll apologize. We'll pay you back." I shook my head slowly. "Apologies spoken only when caught are hollow, Daniel. And money? Money can't buy back respect." For a moment, he looked as if he might collapse right there. His shoulders slumped, and I saw the boy he had once been, the boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard, who cried when his father scolded him too harshly. But that boy was long gone, buried under years of selfishness and entitlement. "I love you, son," I said softly, "but I won't let you use me anymore." His lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. He nodded once, sharply, and walked away. At noon sharp, I stood at the balcony and watched as security escorted them out. The bellman pushed carts of their luggage, neatly packed, while the children shuffled uncertainly beside their parents. Some clung to stuffed animals, others clutched beach towels, all of them confused. Sophia's face was twisted with rage, her voice carrying even to the third floor. "This is insane. She's our mother. How dare she do this to us?" Michael muttered something I couldn't hear. His head hung low. Rachel walked with tears streaming silently down her cheeks, one hand on her son's shoulder. And Daniel, my eldest, kept his chin high, but I could see the crack in his facade. The guests in the lobby watched openly, whispering behind hands. A family thrown out by their own matriarch. It was a spectacle, one they'd tell over dinner later. And yet, I felt no shame, only a profound, aching relief. As the chaos unfolded below, Emily slipped into my suite, closing the door quietly behind her. She looked pale but resolute. "Grandma," she whispered, "I told them I'm staying with you." For a moment, my heart clenched. "Honey, are you sure? They're your parents. I don't want you to feel torn." Her chin lifted, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I love them, but what they did to you was wrong. I can't pretend otherwise. You're the only one who's always been honest with me, who's always cared without conditions. If I leave with them now, it's like I'm saying what they did is okay, and it's not." My throat tightened as I pulled her into my arms. "Emily, you're braver than all of them put together." She clung to me, her shoulders shaking. "I'm not brave. I'm just tired of watching them hurt you." I stroked her hair, whispering into the crown of her head. "Then let's start fresh, just you and me. A new chapter." She nodded against my chest, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt hope. When we descended to the lobby at 12:15, my family was still there, luggage piled around them. Their taxi had just pulled up. The children looked confused, their small faces a mixture of fear and sadness. "Grandma," little Thomas cried, running toward me. He wrapped his tiny arms around my waist. We're not going to build sandcastles anymore. I knelt, hugging him tightly. My heart nearly broke in two. Of course we will, sweetheart. Someday we'll build the biggest sandcastle on the beach. But for now, you must go with your parents. Tears welled in his eyes, but he nodded bravely. I looked up at my sons and daughters-in-law. They avoided my gaze, except Sophia, whose glare could have cut glass. You think you've won, she hissed, but you've destroyed this family. Don't expect us to forgive you. I stood, keeping my voice calm. No, Sophia, I didn't destroy this family. You did, the moment you decided deceit was easier than respect. Daniel opened his mouth, but I lifted a hand. Save your words, you've said enough. The taxi driver began loading their bags. The children climbed inside reluctantly, casting backward glances at me. Emily stayed rooted at my side, her hand firmly gripping mine. As the car doors closed, Rachel burst into tears. Michael muttered something bitter. Daniel's face was a mask of quiet defeat. Sophia slammed the door so hard the car shook. The taxi pulled away, carrying them down the long palm-lined drive until they disappeared from sight. The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time in years, I wasn't tethered to their demands, their endless expectations, their mockery hidden behind polite smiles. Beside me, Emily whispered, "Do you regret it?" I stared at the horizon, where the sea met the sky in an endless stretch of blue. No, I regret only that it took me this long to remember my worth. She squeezed my hand. Where do we go now? I smiled, genuine and unforced. Somewhere we can finally breathe. Somewhere we can laugh without it being at someone's expense. Somewhere we can be a family. David Ramirez approached then, his professionalism softened by warmth. Mrs. Collins, your taxi is ready as requested. Shall I have it take you to the boutique hotel you booked this morning? Yes, please, I said, and thank you for everything. He inclined his head. It's been an honor, ma'am. What you did took remarkable courage. I met his eyes. It wasn't courage, Mr. Ramirez. It was survival. As Emily and I settled into the taxi, I felt something shift deep within me. Not just relief, but liberation. For decades, I had given and given, my identity tied to sacrifice. But now, as the palm trees blurred past the windows, I realized this was more than a trip. It was the beginning of a new life, one where I put myself first, where love meant respect, not exploitation. Emily leaned her head on my shoulder. Grandma, I'm glad you chose yourself this time. I kissed the top of her head. So am I, sweetheart. So am I. The road curved along the coastline, sunlight glittering on the waves. Behind us, my children scrambled to salvage their vacation. But ahead, there was peace, freedom, and the promise of building sandcastles with someone who truly cherished me. And for the first time in decades, I didn't feel like a burden. I felt whole. The taxi hummed softly as it carried us away from the glittering facade of the Golden Palms Hotel. I kept my eyes fixed on the rear window, watching the resort grow smaller with every turn of the palm-lined road. The marble entrance, the fountains, the perfectly trimmed hedges, all the things I had once dreamed of experiencing with my family, now felt like a hollow stage. Beside me, Emily sat quietly, her hand still locked firmly in mine. For the first few miles, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't heavy. It was cleansing, like the hush that follows a violent thunderstorm. I breathed deeply, inhaling the salty tang of the ocean breeze that slipped through the cracked window. For the first time in months, my chest loosened. Finally, Emily broke the silence. Grandma, are you okay? I turned to her, studying her young face, so full of questions, and yet so full of strength. Yes, sweetheart, I'm more than okay. For the first time in my life, I feel free. Her lips curved into a small smile, though her eyes shimmered with concern. I've never seen you like this. You're different. I squeezed her hand gently. That's because I've spent too long letting other people decide my worth. Today, I decided it for myself. By early afternoon, the taxi pulled up to a small boutique hotel perched along the cliffs of the coastline. It was nothing like the towering grandeur of Golden Palms. This place was quieter, cozier, painted in soft pastel colors. draped in bougainvillea vines that spilled purple blossoms over whitewashed walls. The air smelled faintly of jasmine, and the distant roar of the waves echoed up from the rocky shore below. The manager, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, greeted us warmly at the entrance. "Welcome to Seabreeze Inn. Mrs. Collins, we've been expecting you." Her tone carried none of the stiff professionalism of Golden Palms. It was personal, almost maternal, and it soothed me instantly. Emily's eyes widened as we stepped inside. The lobby was decorated with local art and hand-woven rugs, seashells displayed in glass jars, sunlight streaming through open windows that let in the sea air. "Grandma, it feels like a home." "Yes, darling," I said softly, my voice thick with unexpected emotion. "That's exactly what it feels like." Our suite was modest but beautiful. 2 beds with crisp white linens, a balcony overlooking the crashing waves, and a small table set with a basket of fresh fruit. Emily ran to the balcony, laughing as the wind tossed her hair. I set down my suitcase and stood in the doorway, watching her. For months I had imagined sitting on a balcony surrounded by family, sharing laughter and memories. I hadn't known it would be just the 2 of us, but as I listened to Emily's joy, I realized it was enough. More than enough. That evening, we went down to the hotel's small restaurant. There were no marble floors or chandeliers, no hushed servers in pressed uniforms. Instead, there were wooden tables draped with simple linen cloths, the air rich with the smell of grilled fish and herbs. We sat by the window, where we could watch the sunset bleed into the ocean. A kind waiter brought us bowls of clam chowder, fresh bread, and lemon water. Emily tore into the bread hungrily. "This is already better than Golden Palms," she said, her voice muffled through a mouthful. I laughed, really laughed, from the belly, something I hadn't done in years. You might be right. We ate slowly, savoring every bite, talking about small things, her favorite classes at school, the books she wanted to read, the beach she wanted to explore tomorrow. It wasn't the hollow chatter of people pretending to be a family. It was genuine, honest. Halfway through the meal, Emily reached across the table. "Grandma, thank you for bringing me with you. I know it wasn't supposed to happen this way, but I think maybe it's better." Her words caught me off guard, but she was right. Maybe fate had handed me something far better than I had planned. After dinner, we walked down a narrow path that led to the beach. The waves pounded rhythmically against the shore, their white foam glowing in the moonlight. Emily skipped ahead, kicking off her sandals and letting the surf lap at her toes. I followed more slowly, the cool sand soft beneath my feet. For the first time, I let myself breathe without guilt. The sound of the waves seemed to wash away the years of exhaustion, of bending and breaking to please others. Emily came running back, her cheeks flushed from the salty wind. "Grandma, let's build a sandcastle tomorrow. A big one, bigger than anything the kids at Golden Palms could make." I laughed softly, brushing her hair back from her face. "Yes, darling. We'll build a castle so grand the ocean will envy it." Her smile lit up the night. As she darted away again, I sat on a driftwood log, gazing out at the endless sea. Memories of the past 40 years flooded me. Nights spent sewing late into the dark, days selling pies in the town square, the sparkle of my wedding ring now gone. All the sacrifices that had led me here. And yet, for the first time, I didn't feel regret. I felt gratitude, because those sacrifices had given me strength. They had taught me patience, and they had brought me to this moment with the only grandchild who truly saw me. Later, back in our suite, Emily curled up beside me on her bed, her hair still damp from the sea breeze. "Grandma," she whispered, "do you think Dad and Uncle Michael will ever understand what they did?" I sighed, staring at the ceiling. Maybe one day, maybe when they realize that love isn't about taking, it's about respecting. Until then, all I can do is live my life and hope they learn. She was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "I don't ever want to forget this. I don't ever want to treat you the way they did." I turned to her, tears welling in my eyes. "Emily, you already understand more than they do, and that gives me hope." She smiled sleepily, her eyelids drooping. Within minutes she was asleep. her breathing steady and peaceful. I lay awake a little longer, listening to the rhythm of the waves outside, feeling the weight of freedom settle into my bones. The next morning, I woke to the sound of gulls and the golden light of dawn spilling across the balcony. Emily was still asleep, her hair tangled across the pillow, her hand curled loosely against her cheek. I rose quietly, stepping onto the balcony. The ocean stretched before me, endless and alive. For so long, I had believed my life was over, that without my husband, without my children's approval, I had nothing left. But here, standing in the cool morning air, I realized I had everything I needed. I had my strength, I had my freedom, and I had Emily. The rest I could build, sandcastle by sandcastle, moment by moment. That morning, as I watched the sun climb higher, I whispered to myself words I hadn't spoken in years. This is my life, and it's finally mine. The days that followed at the Seabreeze Inn felt like a dream stitched together from threads of peace I hadn't known in decades. Each morning, Emily and I walked barefoot along the beach, the tide washing over our feet, the horizon stretching endlessly ahead of us. For the first time, I didn't count pennies, didn't calculate sacrifices, didn't weigh my worth in what I could give. I simply lived. On the second day, Emily dragged me down to the beach with a plastic bucket and a small shovel borrowed from the hotel's playroom. "Come on, Grandma," she urged, her laughter echoing in the salty wind. "We're building the biggest sandcastle this shore has ever seen." I knelt beside her, my knees aching, but my heart light. Together we carved turrets and walls, moats and bridges. Passers-by stopped to admire our creation, some even taking photos. Emily beamed with pride. When the tide finally claimed our castle, washing it back into the sea, Emily sighed. It didn't last long. I brushed sand from my hands and smiled. That's the beauty of it, darling. Not everything has to last forever to be worth building. Her eyes widened, as though she had just learned something far larger than sandcastles. And perhaps she had. At Golden Palms, every meal had felt like theater. Expensive plates, forced smiles, conversations laced with pretense. But here, meals were simple. Grilled fish fresh from the sea, vegetables grown by local farmers, bread still warm from the oven. Emily and I ate slowly, savoring not just the food, but the ease between us. We laughed about silly things, argued playfully about which ice cream flavor was best, and shared stories that had nothing to do with money or status. One night, Emily leaned across the table, her eyes shining in the candlelight. "Grandma, this feels more like family than anything I've had in years." My throat tightened. "That's because family isn't about blood, Emily. It's about love, about respect, and you've given me more of that than your parents have in a long time." She reached for my hand. "Then I promise I'll never forget that." On the third evening, my phone buzzed with messages. They were from Daniel. His words were a jumble of apology and justification. "Mom, we made a mistake. We were under pressure. We didn't mean to hurt you. Please give us another chance." I stared at the glowing screen, my heart heavy but firm. Emily watched me silently, waiting for my reaction. After a long pause, I typed a single reply. "When you learn that love is not about using people, maybe then we can talk. Until then, I am done being your burden." I turned off the phone. For once, I felt no guilt, only peace. On our last night, Emily and I sat on the balcony, the moon painting silver paths across the waves. "Grandma," she whispered, "what will happen when we go home?" I exhaled slowly. "I don't know. Your parents will be angry. They'll say things to make me feel guilty, but I won't let them anymore. I may be their mother, but I'm also a person. I deserve respect." She nodded thoughtfully. "Do you think I'll have to choose between them and you?" Her words cut deep. I cupped her face in my hands. "No, darling. You don't have to choose. You can love them and still stand by me. Love isn't about sides, it's about truth, and you've already chosen that." Her eyes shimmered with tears. "I just want us to be okay." I smiled softly. "We are okay. For the first time in years, we truly are." On the morning we left Seabreeze Inn, Emily and I woke before dawn and walked to the cliffside to watch the sunrise. The sky blazed with colors, gold, pink, lavender. spilling across the ocean like a promise. Emily leaned her head on my shoulder. "It's beautiful," she murmured. "Yes," I said, my eyes fixed on the horizon. "And so is freedom." I thought about the woman I had been, silently enduring, sacrificing endlessly, mistaking obedience for love. That woman had died the moment I sold my wedding ring to buy a dream that turned into betrayal. What remained was someone new, someone who knew her worth. And standing there, the wind whipping through my hair, Emily's warmth beside me, I whispered a vow to myself. Never again will I let anyone make me feel small. When we finally packed our suitcases and prepared to leave, I glanced once more at the sea. I knew life wouldn't be perfect from here on. My children might never truly change, and perhaps our relationship would remain fractured. But I no longer feared their rejection. I had Emily. I had my strength. And I had the knowledge that love built on respect is stronger than any bloodline. As we rode away from Seabreeze Inn, I thought of the words I wanted to leave not just for my family, but for anyone who might someday hear my story. Value yourself. Don't wait decades to demand respect. Family should be love, not chains. And freedom, the kind that comes from knowing your worth, is the greatest gift you can ever give yourself. The road curved along the coast, the waves crashing below, the sun shining ahead. For the first time in 40 years, I wasn't just surviving. I was living. "Mrs. Collins," he began warmly, "I understand you wish to speak about your reservation." "Yes," I said firmly. My hands rested on the table, no longer trembling. "I need to ensure there's no misunderstanding about who paid for this trip." He nodded, flipping open a folder. "I've reviewed your case with our legal team. According to our records, the reservation for 5 suites, 12 guests, was paid in full by you using your personal credit card." "That's correct," I confirmed. "Do you believe there may be an attempt to dispute or alter the reservation?" I met his gaze directly. "Yes, my children plan to transfer the rooms into their names and later claim the charges were unauthorized." His brows furrowed, though his voice remained calm. "I see. Unfortunately, we've encountered similar cases before. Families can be complicated." I leaned forward. "I need you to give me full control. If any changes are attempted, I want to be contacted immediately. No modifications are to be made without my presence." "Of course," he replied. "I can draft an addendum giving you exclusive authority over the reservation. You will have the legal right to cancel or adjust any suite at your discretion." A chill of power ran through me. For the first time in days, I wasn't the vulnerable widow being mocked behind her back. I was the decision-maker, the one in control. David continued, "I'll also provide you with a notarized statement confirming your payment. Would you like me to arrange a notary to come to your suite?" "Yes," I said. My voice no longer shook. "I want everything official. No loopholes." Later that afternoon, in the quiet of my suite, I dialed the number of Robert Jenkins, the same lawyer who had once guided my husband through writing his will. His voice, familiar and steady, felt like an anchor. "Margaret," he said warmly, "what a surprise. How are you?" I hesitated, then told him everything. Not just the money, but the chat messages, the plan to abandon me with the bill, the years of being treated like a servant instead of a mother. There was silence on the line, broken only by his sigh. "Margaret, what they are planning is elder abuse. Financial exploitation of a senior is a federal crime, and attempting to dispute legitimate charges is bank fraud." The words cut deep, yet also gave me clarity. "So I'm not just overreacting?" "Not at all," Robert said firmly. "You've been used, manipulated, and deceived. You have every right to protect yourself." He explained my options: filing an affidavit, securing my assets, even pursuing charges if I wished. "I'll email you a sworn statement. Have the hotel notary witness your signature. That way, if your children attempt to challenge anything, you will have legal documentation ready." I felt the weight of decades of silence pressing against me, and for once, I pushed back. "Do it, Robert. Send me the papers. I'm done being silent." When I ended the call, I stood by the balcony, staring out at the ocean. Below, I could see them: Daniel in the pool with his kids, Michael lounging under an umbrella, Sophia laughing loudly, Rachel sipping a cocktail. They looked so carefree, so sure of their cleverness. Once, the sight would have broken me. Now it fueled me. For 40 years I had sacrificed. I had sold my wedding ring, the last link to my late husband, to give them joy, and in return they plotted to discard me like yesterday's newspaper. But not anymore. I wasn't their servant. I wasn't their walking wallet. I was Margaret Collins, a woman who had endured too much to be brought down by her own children's greed. By evening, everything was in place. The bank had flagged my account. The hotel had placed exclusive control in my hands. My lawyer had sent me the sworn statement, ready for notarization. I looked at Emily, who had watched me move through each step with wide, cautious eyes. "Grandma," she whispered, "you're different today." I smiled, a real smile, not the forced ones I had given for years. "That's because I've finally remembered who I am." She reached for my hand. "What are you going to do?" I squeezed her fingers. "I'm going to remind them that I'm not a burden. I'm not a fool. And I am not disposable." That night, as the lights of the hotel glimmered against the waves and the muffled music of the bar drifted through the air, I sat at my desk and began writing notes in my own shaky handwriting. Not a diary, not a confession, plans. Because tomorrow, at precisely 10 o'clock, their world would begin to unravel. And for the first time in decades, I would be the one pulling the strings. The morning arrived with a strange calm. I woke before dawn, the habits of months of pie selling still etched into my bones. But this time, I didn't feel the familiar ache of obligation. I felt energy, purpose, even anticipation. Today, the game would change. I dressed carefully, choosing the navy blue suit I had once worn only to my husband's funeral. I had never thought I would wear it again, but something about its somber dignity felt fitting. Around my neck, the pearls gleamed softly like a shield. At 9, my phone buzzed. Emily had sent me a screenshot of the drama-free vacation group chat. Their words sliced through me, but also steeled my resolve. Perfect plan for today. Pool all morning, spa in the afternoon. The old lady will stay in her room like yesterday. After lunch, we'll talk to reception to get control of the other rooms. Did you confirm with the bank? Yes. The dispute process should be ready this afternoon. I almost laughed. They were so certain of their cleverness, so confident in my weakness, but their certainty would be their undoing. At exactly 10, my phone rang. It was David Ramirez, the hotel manager. "Mrs. Collins, the system is ready. The key cards for suites 301, 302, 304, and 305 have been deactivated." "Thank you, Mr. Ramirez," I said calmly. "I trust your staff is prepared?" "Completely. Security and guest services are on standby. We'll follow your instructions exactly." "Good. Then let's proceed." I hung up and sat by the balcony, coffee in hand, watching my family down at the pool. They were laughing, splashing, sipping cocktails in the late morning sun, unaware that the sand beneath their feet was about to collapse. At 10:07, Emily messaged me. "Grandma, Mom just tried to go to the room. Her card didn't work. She's yelling at reception." By 10:15, the situation had escalated. My phone buzzed with a call from Daniel. His voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the panic underneath. "Mom, there's some kind of problem with the rooms. The key cards aren't working. Could you come down and help us fix it?" I sipped my coffee, savoring the moment. "What kind of problem?" "The receptionist says the reservation was changed, but that's impossible. No one changed anything. Can you come clear this up?" I let a pause linger, long enough for him to sweat. "I'm a little busy right now, son. I'm sure it will sort itself out." "Busy? With what?" "Important matters," I said, then ended the call. By 10:30, Emily updated me again. "Grandma, Dad, and Uncle Michael are both arguing with the manager now. Sophia is furious. Rachel looks like she's about to cry." I smiled grimly. "Good," I whispered. "Let them stew." At 10:58, there was pounding at my door, loud, angry, desperate. I opened it to find Daniel, Michael, Sophia, and Rachel. Their faces a storm of confusion and rage. Behind them, several of the grandchildren lingered in the hallway, holding beach bags, their wide eyes filled with fear. "What the hell is going on?" Sophia exploded before I could speak. "Good morning to you too," I replied calmly, stepping aside. "Please, come in." They filed into my suite, their energy frantic. Sophia paced like a caged animal. Rachel wrung her hands, Michael's jaw clenched, and Daniel tried to compose himself as the peacemaker. "Mom," Daniel began, "there's clearly been some kind of misunderstanding. The hotel says you canceled our rooms. That's ridiculous, right? Just tell them it's a mistake." I folded my hands in my lap and looked him square in the eye. "It's not a mistake. I canceled them." Silence fell like a stone. "You, what?" Rachel whispered. "You can't do that," Sophia snapped. "We're your family. You can't just throw us out." "Family?" I echoed softly, pulling Emily's phone from my pocket. I tapped the screen and held it out. "Is this what family does?" The blood drained from Daniel's face as he read the words on the screen. Michael shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting anywhere but at me. Sophia's fury faltered, replaced by a flicker of shame, and Rachel looked as if she might collapse. "This isn't what it looks like," Daniel stammered. "Oh, isn't it?" I asked, my voice sharp as broken glass. "So the old lady took care of everything doesn't mean me? Let her rot in her room while we have fun wasn't about me? The dispute process should be ready this afternoon. What does that mean, Daniel? Tell me." No one answered. "You used me?" I continued, my voice steady now, each word striking like a hammer. "You took my sacrifices, my love, and you mocked me. You planned to leave me with the debt of a vacation I paid for, while you laughed behind my back." "Mom," Michael tried, but I cut him off. Don't you dare call me Mom as if the word still means something to you." Sophia threw up her hands. "Fine, you want to play the martyr? Go ahead, but don't expect us to come running when you're alone and miserable again." I rose from my chair, meeting her eyes with a calm that unnerved even me. I would rather be alone than surrounded by people who despise me. The silence that followed was suffocating. The only sound was the distant crash of the ocean waves outside the balcony doors. Finally, Daniel spoke, his voice breaking. "Mom, please. We can fix this. We'll apologize. We'll pay you back." I shook my head. "No, Daniel, you're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry because you got caught." Michael stepped forward, his eyes desperate. "Think of the kids. What will they think?" I glanced at the doorway where the grandchildren huddled, confused and frightened. My heart ached for them, the only innocents in this whole betrayal. They'll think their parents made terrible choices, and now they face the consequences. At that moment, Emily stepped into the room, her voice clear and trembling with passion. "I already know the truth. I saw everything. You hurt the only person who ever stood by us. Grandma sold her wedding ring for this trip. Did you even know that?" The adults froze. Rachel's face crumpled. Michael muttered, "We didn't know." "Because you never asked," I said quietly. "Because you assumed I had nothing better to do than sacrifice myself for your comfort." I looked each of them in the eyes, one by one. "You have until noon to collect your things. The hotel has kindly packed them for you. After that, you'll need to find another place to stay. This vacation is no longer yours to enjoy." Sophia's face twisted in rage. "You'll regret this." "No," I said softly, opening the door to signal the end of the conversation. "I regret that it took me this long to remember my worth." They filed out slowly, defeated, dragging their shame behind them. The children followed, some confused, some tearful. Only Emily remained by my side, her hand slipping into mine. When the door closed, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. For once, I wasn't the woman begging to belong. I was the woman who had drawn the line. Outside, the ocean roared its approval, and for the first time in my life, I believed it. I had won. The silence after the confrontation lingered in the walls of my suite long after my children had stormed out. I sat by the balcony, my body trembling not from fear, but from the strange, electric energy that follows a storm. For decades, I had been the quiet one, the fixer, the servant in my own family. Now I had drawn a line so sharp it could never be erased. The lobby seemed emptier than I had ever imagined. I held the keys in my hand, the receptionist's words still echoing in my ears. 5 family suites, 7 nights, all inclusive. It should have been a moment of pride, a triumph after months of sacrifice. Yet, when I turned to share it with my children, they were gone. Only Emily lingered by the potted palms, her face pale, her hands clutching the strap of her bag. Something in her eyes made my stomach twist. She looked guilty, as though she carried a secret too heavy for her young shoulders. "Where did everyone go?" I asked, forcing a lightness into my voice that I didn't feel. "They went to the elevators," she murmured, biting her lip. "They said you'd catch up later." The words stung, but I tried to smile. "That's all right. We'll see them in the rooms." But Emily didn't move. She stayed rooted to the floor, her eyes darting everywhere but at me. Finally, she took a deep breath and whispered, "Grandma, there's something I need to show you." Confusion rippled through me. "What is it, sweetheart?" She pulled her phone from her pocket, her hands trembling. She tapped quickly, then held it out to me. On the screen was a chat group labeled Drama-Free Vacation. My heart stuttered as I recognized the names. Daniel, Sophia, Michael, Rachel, my sons, my daughters-in-law, the very people I had believed this trip was for. "Emily, what is this?" My voice shook. Her eyes filled with tears. "It's their group chat. They didn't want you to come. They've been talking about you." I took the phone, my hands trembling so violently I could barely hold it steady. The most recent messages burned into my eyes. "We've arrived. The old lady took care of everything, as usual. Perfect. Now we can enjoy ourselves without her breathing down our necks." Did you see how excited she was at reception? Embarrassing. At least she's useful for something. Let her stay in her room watching TV while we take advantage of everything. The words blurred as tears filled my vision. My chest felt tight, as if the marble floor beneath me had shifted. I scrolled further, each line striking deeper. "Don't worry. If she gets too pushy, we'll just tell her she looks tired and should go rest. The kids will have fun. That's what matters. She can do her own thing." I closed my eyes, clutching the phone as if I could squeeze the venom out of the words. 8 months of pies, of aching fingers from sewing, of nights spent in the cold with the heat turned down, all for this. Also, my own children could mock me behind my back. Emily's voice trembled. "Grandma, I didn't know how to tell you. I thought maybe they'd change their minds, but they didn't." I sank onto one of the white leather sofas, my legs too weak to hold me. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. My whole body shook with the weight of betrayal. Then I scrolled further up the chat, and my blood ran cold. "Did you confirm with the bank?" "Yes, the dispute process should be ready this afternoon." "Perfect. By tomorrow, we won't have to worry about the expenses. Mom will take the hit. Also, make sure the hotel transfers the rooms to our names. We don't want her having control over anything." My vision swam. Not only had they planned to exclude me from their fun, but they also intended to leave me with the entire bill. My sons, my flesh and blood, had conspired to commit fraud against me. I pressed the phone to my chest, gasping for air. A sound escaped me, half sob, half bitter laugh. 40 years, I whispered. 40 years of sacrifice, and this is what I am to them, a burden, a wallet. Emily sat beside me, tears streaming down her face. "Grandma, I tried to tell them it was wrong. I told Dad. I told Mom. But they said I was too young to understand." I turned to her, cupping her cheek with trembling hands. "You understood more than they ever did, my darling." For several minutes, I sat in silence, the phone heavy in my lap, my mind spinning. Memories flashed like cruel photographs. Daniel's smile when he asked me to book the hotel. Michael's quick words, "We'll figure out the money later." Sophia's dismissive tone. Rachel's polite but distant nods. I thought of the day I sold my wedding ring, the way Mr. Green's eyes softened when he counted out the bills. "It's a fine piece, Margaret. Sentimental, I'm sure." He had no idea how right he was. And I had given it up. For them. The anger rose slowly, not like a flame but like a tide, steady and unstoppable. For so long I had been the woman who swallowed her pain, who smiled through the insults, who bore humiliation in silence because I believed love required sacrifice. But this was beyond sacrifice. This was exploitation. Abuse. Fraud. I straightened in my seat, wiping the tears from my cheeks. My hands still shook, but not from weakness, from something else. Resolve. Emily looked at me anxiously. "Grandma, are you okay?" I met her eyes, and for the first time in years, my voice was steady. "No, Emily, I'm not okay, but I'm done being their fool." She blinked, surprised. "What do you mean?" I looked at the phone again, rereading the cruel words, the plans to strip me of control. Then I handed it back to her. "It means your grandmother has had enough. They think I'm weak. They think I'm blind. But they've underestimated me. They always have." Emily bit her lip. "What are you going to do?" I rose to my feet, smoothing my dress, feeling the pearls at my throat like armor. "I don't know yet, but I won't let them get away with this. Not this time." We walked down the hall toward my suite. My steps grew firmer with each stride. Behind the sting of betrayal, a strange clarity emerged. For the first time in decades, I wasn't thinking about what Daniel or Michael wanted, or what Sophia and Rachel expected. I was thinking about myself, my dignity, my future. In my suite, I sat by the balcony, staring out at the ocean. The waves crashed rhythmically against the shore, as if echoing the pounding of my heart. Below, I could see my family already at the pool, laughing, drinking cocktails, their children splashing in the water. They looked so carefree, so certain that they had pulled off the perfect scheme. I clenched my fists. "Enjoy it while you can," I whispered, "because this game has just changed." Emily sat across from me, wide-eyed. "Grandma?" I turned to her, and for the first time in a long while I smiled. It wasn't the fragile smile of someone desperate to be included. It was the smile of someone who had found her strength. "They wanted a drama-free vacation," I said softly. "Well, they're about to get the exact opposite." That night, while the laughter of my family drifted faintly through the walls from the hotel bar, I sat alone in my suite, the ocean breeze seeping through the balcony doors. I had cried until my body felt hollow. But somewhere between the tears and the silence, something hardened inside me. I realized I had only two choices: to remain the fool they believed me to be, or to rise, to fight with every ounce of dignity I still had left. I chose the latter. The first call was the hardest. My fingers trembled as I dialed the number on the back of my card. For 20 minutes, I listened to robotic voices direct me through endless menus until, finally, a human voice came on the line. "National Bank, this is Linda Martinez. How may I help you today?" I swallowed hard. "Good evening. My name is Margaret Collins. I need to report a potential fraud attempt involving my credit card." Her tone shifted instantly, growing serious. "Of course, Mrs. Collins. Can you verify your identity for me?" I gave her the details, each word steady despite the storm in my chest. Once she confirmed, I told her everything. Not all the family betrayal, I couldn't bear to reveal that, but the part that mattered. I made a reservation at the Golden Palms Hotel for $4,200. I authorized every cent of that transaction, but I have reason to believe someone will attempt to dispute the charges fraudulently in my name. I need to protect this account. There was a pause on the other end as Linda typed notes into her system. "Do you have evidence of this, Mrs. Collins?" "Yes," I said, gripping the phone tighter. "I have documents of the reservation, confirmation emails, and witnesses who can verify my authorization." And my voice wavered before regaining strength. "I overheard family members planning to dispute the charges with your bank." Her tone softened, though it remained professional. "I'm placing a protection flag on your account. Any dispute will trigger an immediate investigation requiring substantial evidence. Until then, the charges remain valid." Relief washed over me like a tide. It was the first wall I had built against their betrayal. "Thank you, Linda. Thank you for believing me." "Mrs. Collins," she replied gently, "you'd be surprised how often family can be the hardest to protect yourself from. You did the right thing." When I hung up, I sat for a long moment, breathing deeply. One battle won, but the war was just beginning. The following morning, I requested a meeting with the hotel manager. At precisely 9 o'clock, I found myself sitting in a sleek office that overlooked the manicured gardens. The air smelled faintly of leather and coffee. Across from me sat David Ramirez, a man in his 40s with kind eyes, but the professional demeanor of someone used to handling delicate situations. I stood frozen in the marble lobby of the Golden Palms Hotel, my suitcase still in my hand, while my own children walked away from me as if I were a stranger. Daniel and Michael, my two sons, were laughing with their wives, Sophia and Rachel, heading toward the elevator without sparing me a single glance. Their voices carried across the grand hall, echoing under the chandelier lights. And then I heard Sophia say it, clear as a knife to the chest. Finally, we're free of the burden. They all laughed. My family, the people I had given my life to. Not one of them knew I was standing only a few feet away. Not one of them cared. They didn't know that I had sold pies every Sunday morning for 8 months in the biting cold at our town square, stashing coins in a cookie tin hidden behind dusty cans of beans. They didn't know I had sold my wedding ring, my last piece of a 40-year marriage, to make this trip possible. And they certainly didn't know what I was about to do. But before I tell you how I turned their perfect vacation upside down, let me take you back to where it all began. 3 weeks earlier, on a Tuesday afternoon, in the quiet kitchen of my small home. The winter sun had been streaming through the window, warming the table where I had placed my cup of coffee. It was a ritual I had repeated every day since I became a widow 4 years ago. The same chipped mug, the same steady silence, the same attempt to fill the emptiness of a life lived alone. That was the moment the phone rang. On the other end was Daniel, my eldest son, using that soft, careful voice he always reserved for when he wanted something. "Mom," he said warmly, "I have a wonderful idea." And just like that, my heart betrayed me with a flutter. Because no matter how many years had passed, no matter how many times I had been left on the sidelines of their lives, nothing thrilled me more than being included. When Daniel spoke of a family trip, my heart nearly stopped. For years, I had dreamed of being part of something like that again, of not just standing in the background, cooking dinners and clearing plates while my children and their spouses discussed their careers, vacations, and plans that never included me. For one brief second, I allowed myself to believe that perhaps this time would be different. "Think about it, Mom," Daniel continued, his voice warm and persuasive. "All of us together, me, Sophia, the kids, Michael, Rachel, their kids, and you, of course, just like in the good old days." I pressed the phone harder against my ear, staring at the kitchen window. Outside, the afternoon sun lay across the snow-dusted garden, glinting off the bare branches. For the first time in years, I felt something rising inside me that I had almost forgotten: hope. He went on to describe the hotel he had found, his voice brimming with excitement. "It's on the coast, Mom. Pools, restaurants, activities for the kids. They even have nightly shows and spa treatments. It's perfect. Just imagine, 7 whole days together, all of us. A real vacation as a family." I bit my lip, tears pricking my eyes. For years I had wanted nothing more than to be wanted. I could almost see the photographs in my mind, the grandchildren splashing in the pool, me sitting at the table while everyone laughed and shared stories, us walking together along the beach at sunset. I could almost believe we would be whole again, if only for a week. "Mom," Daniel's voice softened even more, careful, almost too careful. "There's just one small detail. The hotel requires a single person to make the reservation. It's a policy thing. Could you maybe take care of it? Make the booking in your name. We'll transfer the money to you later." My heart squeezed, but not with surprise. It was always me who signed my name, who guaranteed the loans, who filled out the paperwork, who stood behind the curtain making sure everything ran smoothly while my family took the spotlight. And yet, I didn't mind. Not this time. Not if it meant being included. "Of course, son," I said softly, trying to disguise the quiver in my voice. "You can count on me." That evening, after hanging up, I sat in my rocking chair with my notebook spread open on my lap. My hands trembled as I wrote down the dates Daniel had given me. January 2nd through the 9th. 7 days, 12 people, 5 family suites, My pen hovered above the page when I imagined the cost. I didn't even know what a hotel like that would charge, but deep down I suspected it would be far more than I could afford. The next afternoon I called the Golden Palms Hotel. The receptionist's voice was cheerful, professional. "Good afternoon, Golden Palms Resort. How can I help you?" My pulse thundered in my ears. "I'd like to make a reservation," I managed, my voice trembling. "For 12 people." "Of course, ma'am. That would be 5 family suites. All inclusive." "What dates?" I repeated the dates. I could hear her typing, the clicks of her keyboard like hammer blows. "That will be a total of $4,200. To confirm the reservation, we'll need a 50% deposit today. $2,100. The breath caught in my throat. I gripped the receiver so hard my knuckles turned white. $4,200. My pension was $800 a month. My savings barely enough for emergencies. My heart felt as though it had dropped straight into my stomach. "Ma'am, are you still there?" "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, I'm here. Can I pay later?" "I'm afraid not. A deposit is required today." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the darkened living room, wrapped in my old quilt, the house silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock. I calculated and recalculated. $50 in cash hidden in a cookie tin, a few hundred in savings. And then my eyes drifted to my hand, to the ring. The one piece of jewelry I had never considered parting with, the wedding ring my late husband had slipped onto my finger 42 years ago. The diamond wasn't large, but it sparkled whenever light struck it, a constant reminder of the man I had loved and lost. My chest tightened as I slid it off, holding it between my fingers. Could I really sell it? Could I really give up the last tangible piece of him? The next morning, I walked into Mr. Green's jewelry shop downtown. The bell above the door chimed, the sound far too cheerful for the heaviness I felt. "Margaret," he greeted, surprised. "Haven't seen you in years. What brings you here?" I placed the ring on the counter, my hand shaking. I need to know what you'd give me for this." He examined it with his loupe, turning it gently in his wrinkled hands. "It's a fine piece, Margaret. Sentimental, I'm sure. I can give you $800. $800. $100. For 42 years of love, loyalty, and sacrifice." It felt like an insult, a slap. But then I pictured Daniel's smile. I imagined Emily's face lighting up at the hotel pool. I imagined walking along the beach with Ethan holding my hand. "It's a deal," I whispered. I walked out of the jewelry store clutching the envelope of cash, the absence of the ring on my finger heavier than its weight had ever been. With that money and the scraps of my savings, I scraped together enough for the $2,100 deposit. My hands trembled as I called the hotel again that afternoon, giving them my card number, hearing the confirmation. "Congratulations, Mrs. Collins," the receptionist said brightly. "Your reservation for 12 guests has been confirmed. 5 family suites, Ocean View, January 2nd to 9th. We look forward to welcoming you." As she spoke, I felt something swell in my chest. For the first time in years, I wasn't excluded. For the first time, I was doing something that would bring us all together. My sacrifices, every pie baked and sold at the town square, every dollar pinched from turning down the heat in winter, every walk I took instead of riding the bus, they would finally be worth it. I hung up the phone and sat quietly in my kitchen, staring at my empty finger, at the faint indentation where the ring had rested for over 4 decades. My husband would have wanted me to keep it, but he also would have wanted me to have my family close. At least, that's what I told myself. I whispered into the silence of the kitchen, as if he could still hear me. "This is for them, for all of us. Please let it be worth it." In the days that followed, the weight of the reservation pressed on my shoulders like a physical burden. The hotel had my card information, and I knew the final payment, another $2,100, would be due before we checked in. I had just enough saved to cover the deposit, but the rest felt impossible. Yet, I had already taken the first step. There was no turning back. For the first time in years, I had something to look forward to, something bigger than my lonely routines, something brighter than the silence of my empty house. And so I told myself, I'll make it work. I have to. Every Sunday morning, before the town was fully awake, I loaded my pies into battered cardboard boxes and carried them to the square. The air was sharp with the bite of winter, my breath visible in the cold as I set up my small folding table. The same children who once bought cookies from me after school were now adults who walked by with their families, but some still stopped to smile and hand me a few dollars. "Apple pie, Mrs. Collins?" "My kids love it," one young mother said. "Blueberry for me," said another man, pressing the bills into my hand with a kind smile. Each sale was a step closer to that dream of sitting with my family at one long table, hearing their laughter surround me. Each coin I dropped into my cookie tin was a promise I made to myself. This will be worth it. But baking pies alone wasn't enough. I took in sewing work from neighbors, hemming dresses, patching worn-out jeans, fixing old coats for a fraction of what a tailor would charge. My fingers ached at night, raw from the needle, but I kept going. I turned down the heat in the house to save on the utility bill. The rooms grew cold, my breath visible inside the living room, but I wrapped myself in sweaters and blankets and told myself the chill was nothing compared to the warmth I would feel seeing my grandchildren happy. I cut meat from my diet, relying on soups of beans and potatoes, stretching every grocery dollar until it nearly broke. Some nights my stomach grumbled as I lay in bed, but I whispered into the darkness, 7 days, Margaret. Just 7 days of joy, and it will all be worth it. The bus became a luxury I could no longer afford. I walked across town in the snow with bags of flour and sugar in my arms, each step heavy, my boots soaked through, but my determination never wavering. At times, I caught my reflection in shop windows and barely recognized the woman staring back. Older, thinner, tired, but her eyes still held a glimmer of purpose. Daniel and Michael would call occasionally to ask how the trip planning was going. "Mom, everything set with the hotel?" Daniel asked one evening, his voice casual, as though he were asking about the weather. "Yes," I replied, forcing a cheerfulness into my voice. "Just waiting to make the final payment." "Great," he said quickly. "We'll talk about money later. The important thing is that we're all going to be together." I bit back the words that burned on my tongue. When will later come? Instead, I smiled into the phone and said, "Yes, son, that's what matters." But when the call ended, I sat in silence, staring at the empty space on my finger where my wedding ring had once been. I rubbed the skin there absent-mindedly, still expecting to feel the band. The absence stung every time I thought about it, but I reminded myself, this was for family. This was for love. As the new year approached, my days blurred into a cycle of baking, sewing, saving, and sacrificing. My body ached, my hands shook from exhaustion, but my heart clung desperately to the image of us together. I told myself the grandchildren would splash in the pool, I would hold Ethan's hand as we built sandcastles, and Emily, sweet Emily, would sit with me on the balcony overlooking the ocean, talking about her dreams for college. 3 days before the trip, Daniel called again, excitement bubbling in his voice. "Mom, you don't know how much we're looking forward to this week. The kids are bouncing off the walls. Sophia already has the suitcases packed." "That's wonderful," I said softly. "How are things with the hotel? Everything ready?" "Yes, Daniel. Just one last payment left." Right. We'll figure that out when we get there. Don't worry about it. The important thing is that we're going to have fun." When the call ended, I sat in my rocking chair with tears sliding silently down my cheeks. They spoke so easily, as if money were air, something that simply existed. They had no idea the cost, not just in dollars, but in blood, sweat, and pieces of my life I could never recover. The night before the trip, I stood at the kitchen counter with my credit card in my hand, staring at the numbers, my chest tight. $2,100. My hands trembled as I entered the payment, my heart pounding in my ears as the confirmation appeared on the screen. In that moment, I was drained of everything, my savings, my jewelry, my energy. But I was also filled with a fragile, trembling kind of joy. I had done it. I had pulled off the impossible. Tomorrow we would leave for the Golden Palms. Tomorrow I would finally belong. As I turned off the lights and walked to my bedroom, I whispered again into the silence, as I had so many nights before, "Please let it be worth it. Please let this be the week my family remembers me as more than the woman who cooked their dinners and cleaned their plates. Please let me matter." The morning of the trip felt like Christmas. I woke before the first trace of dawn lit the horizon, my heart racing with a mixture of nerves and excitement. For weeks, every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every dollar saved had led to this day. I opened the small suitcase that I had packed the night before, checking each item one last time, my best dresses carefully folded, my pearl necklace, which had once belonged to my mother, the sturdy walking shoes I had chosen for strolls on the beach, and a bottle of perfume I hadn't worn in years. I stood in front of the mirror, smoothing the wrinkles in my pale blue dress, the one Michael had once said made me look younger. For the first time in a long while, I dusted blush onto my cheeks and applied a touch of lipstick. My hands trembled as I fastened the pearls around my neck. I wanted to look good for the family photos I imagined we would take. I wanted to look like someone who belonged. By 7 o'clock, I was standing at the front door with my suitcase by my side, waiting. Daniel had promised to pick me up. Through the window, I watched the quiet street, the frost still clinging to the edges of the pavement. My heart leapt at the sound of a car horn outside. I grabbed my bag, locked the door, and stepped out, my breath puffing in little clouds in the crisp morning air. Daniel was at the wheel, waving impatiently. "Come on, Mom, we're running late," he called. I smiled as I opened the car door, but the warmth of his words didn't match his hurried tone. In the passenger seat sat Sophia, her eyes glued to her phone. She barely looked up when I climbed in. "Good morning, family," I said brightly. "Hi, Grandma," the kids in the back seat replied without lifting their eyes from the glowing tablet screen in their hands. Sophia muttered something that might have been a greeting, though her eyes never left the group chat on her phone. Daniel shifted the car into gear. "Are you ready for a perfect family vacation, Mom?" he asked, though his voice was tired, distracted. "Yes," I said, clasping my hands in my lap. "I've been looking forward to this for weeks." As we drove through the countryside, I tried to spark conversations. I asked Daniel about his work, about whether the kids were excited for the pool, about what plans they had for the week. Each answer was short, clipped, delivered without enthusiasm. Sophia scrolled endlessly, occasionally laughing softly at something on her screen. "Something funny?" I asked once, trying to include myself. "It's just my friends," she said, dismissive. "Nothing you'd understand." Her words struck like a pin in a balloon. I turned my eyes to the passing fields outside the window. Barns dusted with snow, trees bare and skeletal, the faint warmth of the winter sun, everything felt strangely distant. I reminded myself that this was just the beginning, that things would change once we arrived. When we finally pulled into the hotel's circular driveway 3 hours later, my breath caught in my throat. The golden palms was more beautiful than the glossy photos online had promised. Tall palm trees swayed in the ocean breeze, their fronds glittering in the sunlight. Water fountains sparkled in the grand entrance, their gentle sound mingling with the far-off roar of the ocean. The hotel itself gleamed white against the blue sky, its manicured gardens bursting with flowers of every color. "It's even more beautiful than I imagined," I whispered. My chest swelled with joy, the weariness of the long drive forgotten. The children jumped out of the car, squealing with excitement as they ran toward the entrance. Daniel and Sophia busied themselves with the suitcases, barely acknowledging me. Just then, Michael's car pulled up behind us. Rachel stepped out, followed by Emily and Ethan. Emily rushed toward me, her eyes shining. "Grandma, this place is amazing. Did you see the pool? It's huge, and they said there are shows every night." I hugged her tightly, grateful for at least one soul who shared my enthusiasm. "Yes, sweetheart, it's going to be a wonderful week." Inside the lobby, I stood in awe. The marble floors gleamed under the light of crystal chandeliers. White leather sofas lined the space, and tropical plants in tall pots reached toward the ceiling. The scent of fresh flowers and ocean air mingled in the air. It felt like stepping into a dream. I approached the reception desk, my hands trembling as I handed over my ID. "Reservation for Margaret Collins," I said, my voice barely steady. The receptionist's smile was warm. "Yes, Mrs. Collins, we've been expecting you. 5 family suites, 7 nights, 12 guests, all inclusive. Everything is in order." As she prepared the elegant palm-shaped keychains, I turned, expecting to see my family gathered behind me, sharing in this moment. But when I looked around, my breath caught. The lobby was empty. They had all slipped away toward the elevators without waiting for me. Only Emily lingered nearby, her eyes darting nervously between me and her parents. "Where did everyone go?" I asked, my stomach sinking. "They went upstairs already," Emily admitted softly. "Dad said you'd join later." I clutched the keys in my hand, my fingers shaking. The joy I had carried with me all morning drained away in an instant, leaving only the sting of humiliation. I forced a smile for Emily's sake, but deep down, I felt the first fracture in the fragile hope I had built. Something wasn't right.